Welcome everybody to today's, we're calling this Office Hours series. It's really a series of live demos and best practices. I'm here with Komprise Field CTO, Benjamin Henry, and today we're excited to be covering a topic that is clearly based on the amount of folks registering, a really hot one, how to use deep analytics, tying it into the global metadatabase, really the core, the crown jewels, if you will, of Komprise, and really helping you get more surgical with your data. And just as a reminder, you can see previous sessions. Cost savings and tiering was the first one, just given the importance right now of stretching flash capacity, getting more out of what you have with intelligent tiering. That was a really good one. We then introduced smart data workflows and Kappa data services. So really going beyond cost savings use cases, getting into how to get value from all of this unstructured data locked in different NAS, cloud, SaaS systems. We covered migration best practices. And then in our next session, which we'll talk about at the end, and we'll actually share the registration link, we're going to go into showback reports and really the power of some of the reporting that you may see a little bit of today. All right, Ben, let's jump into deep analytics. Tell us what we're going to cover today.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. And as a reminder, this is an interactive office hour session. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, and you'll hear Darren throw those questions my way. All right, so we're going to talk about building a query, how to use the queries in a data management plan. Data management is your tiering and archiving, how to use it in a smart data workflow, and then we're going to talk a little bit about data lakehouses. All right, so a few things to know is that deep analytics and the global metadatabase is included in the full license. There is a deep analytics role that is designed to empower end users, researchers, data stewards to help you make decisions, build queries, and set you up for success. Tagging and queries are also accomplished in the same area of Komprise. And then we're going to talk a little bit also about system queries versus user queries. So with that, let's switch gears and jump right into a demo.
And Ben, just for context for everyone on this call, I mean, we have a real wide spectrum of people attending. We have some that are newer to Komprise, some are really trying to get to the next level, maybe only using us for a narrow use case today. And then we have a lot of partners on the call. So hopefully there'll be a little bit of something for everyone here.
Awesome. Thanks, Darren. All right. So when I log into Komprise, I come here to my plan page. The plan page is your tiering and archiving area. We have the data donut. So as a quick review, we have the data donut. My screen just refreshed. And the data donut is your heat map to talk about how hot or cold the data is. The usage tab tells me a little bit more about that, about the types of files that are kind of grouped into these categories here. And then I get the space consumed by those files. I can toggle between the size and the number of files being reported. And we covered this in a previous video, but what if I want to go further? What if I want to see more about this category, about videos or archive or logs? Well, that's where we start talking about the deep analytics and the global metadatabase. So at the top, I'm going to click on deep analytics, and the landing page is a preview of the queries that are built. And some of these are system-based queries that are already predefined for you to get you started up and running quickly. Some are ones that I have saved. Some are ones that are also system queries. So I talked about earlier about the difference between user and system queries. So user queries is anything that's built by a user. A system query is anything that's in use by Komprise to drive tiering and archiving, smart data workflows, whatever that function may be. So let's start by building a new query. So new query, top right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, we have all the filters that I can use to define my query. We start with data store. So data stores is all of your storage that's been added to Komprise for analysis. I can see here that I can go across sites. So I've got storage at Atlanta and Boston. So I can run a query across the enterprise, or I can be narrow and just kind of reduce that data set as well by drilling into the storage. So here I'll look at Atlanta, I'll drill into the Isilon, I'll go to the system zone, I'll look at marketing. So I can check any one of these boxes along the way to say I run it across everything in Atlanta, run across everything on this one cluster, run anything on this one zone, talk about just this one share, or I can dive inside that share and be more specific. So I'm going to pick on marketing. That's one of the areas I always love to do. Darren will probably make a comment here in a second about that. Let's look at the sales area of marketing. So I'm going to start by being very specific and looking at the sales area of marketing. I can then say, hey, you know what? I want to look for file names that start with, contains, end with. I can add a filter here to say, I want to look for anything that's called, I don't know, Q1. starts with Q1, and I can add that. I can also do the inverse. I can say exclude anything that starts with Q1. You add that, and you'll see that what we call the pill capsule changes. When you include something, it's a solid color. When you exclude something, you have those hash marks on the inside. All right. I can also filter by modified date, access date. I can filter by if I had tiered data. I can say only look at moved data. I can say I want to look at file type. Well, let's take a look at video, for example. So I'm going to look inside sales for video. I can filter by extensions. So the screen I'm on right now is a grouping of extensions. So inside video is the most commonly known video format extensions. You can add to that. You can remove that. You can even add your own categories here, or say I only want to look at a very specific extension type and add that. All right, you can look at file sizes and put ranges on them. You can look at group ownership, single owner. Again, it starts with, ends with, contains. I'm going to come back to this because there's a really cool feature right here with this one. Or I can even filter by Komprise tags. All right, so back to this query, marketing share, specific subfolder, looking for videos, hit run. And now I can see I've got 2.7 terabytes and 60,000 files. So I get my heat map here as well. And when I hover over top of this, I get the size and statistics of how much this makes up. So this is 349 gigs. That's 3 years or older, and it counts for 12%. So on and so forth. I can hover over each one of these. If I had multiple shares in this query, I would see them broken out here with their heat map and space consumed. Well, what if I want to see a list of those files? Well, little click here brings up a preview of those files. And then I can also extract that report right here by using this download link at the top. So let's back out of this one and say, okay, I've identified this data, but I want to refine this. Well, I can simply filter it again, and I can say, I want to look at last access date more than 1 year ago. All right, so now that's reduced the file count by about half. So 1.4 terabytes, almost 31,000 files. Well, I want to do something with this now. So these videos haven't been accessed in more than a year. So let's save this query and show how we can build a tiering or archive plan based on it. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to choose public versus private. So private means only I can see this query. Public means anyone in my organization can see this query. So I'm going to save this as public because I want Darren to be able to use this and see it. I'm going to call this marketing dash videos older than 1 year. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now what I'm going to do is go to my plan page. I'm going to create a new plan, call my marketing plan. The group, I'm just going to call it sales. I'm going to hit enter. All right, so now I want to do a move operation. Again, we covered the different features in a previous video, but I'm going to turn move on. I'm going to say, rather than an age-based policy, I want to base this on a deep analytics query. And down here, I have my marketing video right here. So I have shares in a previous plan, and it's overlapping, so it's going to throw a message there to tell me that, hey, this is in a different plan. Let me just hit add shares. Let me go here, say system zone, marketing, save. All right. Now I've selected that share. All right. So now I'm being explicit saying, yeah, I know it was in another plan. I want to use it over here. So I'm moving that share over here to this plan. I'm basing it on a deep analytics query. That deep analytics query was very specific. Marketing share, subfolder sales, videos haven't been touched in 1 year or more. There's also a default exclusion down here. A lot of vendors don't want to deal with small data. They don't want you to place anything smaller than 128K, specifically in the cloud. So by default, we have that exclusion turned off or turned on. If you want to, because you're using an on-prem object storage or other NAS appliance, just uncheck that box. Now we'll also send small files along with it, but always check your terms of service to make sure that's applicable or not applicable. All right, I can simply say done editing, activate this plan, and this data will start tiering to the service that I choose. All right, so that's one way to use a plan. Darren, you're gonna ask a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. I know most of our customers are using the age-based, the slider for tiering.
Yeah.
Are you finding the use of the deep analytics query? Are there specific use cases like confine, for example, might be a good one, or copy? What are you seeing as kind of primary use cases to use a query instead of the age?
Yeah, so great question, Darren. Is that age is like painting a wall. So if you're in a house painting a wall, you're painting that one wall the same color. It's pretty easy to choose. So I can make broad strokes and say, all right, I want to tier everything in the share that hasn't been accessed in 1 year or more. But that's everything. Well, I want to again be more specific. I want to be more surgical. I only want to go after videos. I only want to go after data that might have PII in it, or the inverse. I don't want to touch the data that has PII. I want to go after everything else. So the deep analytics query really allows you to be specific and even hyper specific, because I not only said, okay, not just this one share, but I only want to look in this one directory. So it gives you the power to be very surgical in these situations. Answer your question?
Yeah, I also think, we're seeing a growing interest in AI ingestion. So that would be a good one, right? So make that a very specific query as your input. And I think you're going to talk about that with smart data workflows later.
They asked a leading question, so I might as well go there now. Perfect. All right, so let's jump back over to deep analytics and talk about, well, we'll use ingestion for the use case here. So I'm going to create a new query, and then I'm going to start with a different share in this situation. So I'll pick the flash blade, and I'll look inside this share, and I can say, all right, well, we want to use, let's pick something here, operations. So within operations, I have a requirement to send this data to AI to train an AI model. All right, well, I don't want to send everything. I specifically want to exclude certain file types because it's irrelevant to training the model. I want to train the model on text-based documents in here. So let's come back here and talk about file types again. So I filtered it to one share, operations, and I only want to send text-based documents. So let's look at this. Let's go after document, log, mail, presentation, script, source code. Maybe I don't want to send source code there. Spreadsheets and text. So you have the ability to reduce the file extensions, file types that you're going to be ingesting into your AI model. So let's run this. All right, so now we're at 12.2 terabytes and 276,000 files. All right, let's go ahead and save this. So this is going to be called ops. All right, spelling it correctly, ops AI ingest. Let's save that query. So rather than going to the plan page this time, I'm going to go to workflows. Workflows, I click add workflow. I'm going to choose copy for ingestion. In here, I'm going to choose my cloud provider. I'm just going to choose AWS. I'm going to just call this bucket 123. This is a demo. I have the ability to land this data. So again, I made a query. I'm going to make a high-speed copy of this data in the cloud for AI ingestion, but maybe I want to put it at the root of the bucket. Maybe I want to put it in a very specific prefix. Well, I'm just going to put it at the root of the bucket. I put in my access key, 1, secret password, 1. I get to choose my region type. I get to choose my region. I'm going to put it US East. I get to choose the endpoint type, and I also get to choose the default storage class. All right, so I'm going to click next. And from here, AI ingest gives you the ability to, again, broad strokes. You can choose the entire share, but in this case, I don't want to. I want to be a little more specific. So in here, I've got my ops AI ingestion query that I created on a previous screen. I'm going to click next. I can choose whether I want this workflow to run one time or if I want it to repeat. So if data is constantly changing, I get to say, okay, I want this to repeat. I get to say re-upload everything or only send changes and new data. And then I can say whether I want to stage this by leaving it turned off or whether I want it to run automatically when I'm done. I want this to kick off automatically, only need it to run one time. Workflow, I can add more information in the description here, and then I'm going to go ahead and click next. A lot like our migrations, you get a review of all the criteria you've selected, and then I'm going to click start workflow. So what that's doing is it's converting the protocol. It's taking the SMB data or NFS, depending on what my source was, converting it to object and making a high-speed copy so that my AI engine can ingest it. What a lot of customers do is they don't want to release AI on their source data, on the original data set. They want to protect and maintain that data set and its structure. So When we make a copy, we preserve all the metadata, including the access time, make a high-speed copy, convert the protocol, allow your AI ingestion engine to run against it in object format. Object is typically cheaper than traditional NAS. And then you can drop that data when you're done training the model. All right, so that's going to run in the background. Let's talk about another use case here. So I'm going to go back to my deep analytics. Let's say I want to train a model, but I have to ensure there's no EPHI or PII in my data. Well, again, new query. Let's start within the data store. Let's pick something else here. I'm going to go to NetApp. I'm going to say across the entire sales SVM, I want to look for any sensitive data. So I'm going to start there. But again, I'm going to be looking for text-based sensitive data. So let's go back to the file type and let's exclude all the noise. I'm not going to be sending virtual machine images through a PII scanner looking for text when it's not going to contain text. It's a different format. So let's reduce, let's shrink the data set, make it more efficient. All right, so we're going to choose again, document, logs, mail, presentation, script. This time I want to look at source code. I want to look at spreadsheets and I want to look at text. All right, let's hit run. So in this query, I've got about 37 terabytes and 829,000 files. I can preview that data. I can extract that data and I can save this query. I'm going to make it public again. I'm going to say, you'll notice I'm changing these. I haven't used a standard format because this is free text. You can use whatever name and whatever format you want in here. Hit save. All right, let's go back to workflows. Let's add a workflow. And let's this time choose PII scanner. So the PII scanner is like your quick start guide. There's 68 built-in content scanners. If you wanted to be more specific, or if you have a medical record number that's unique, which most hospitals and health networks, their medical record numbers are completely unique, we offer keyword regex. The keyword function is you just type in a word that you're looking for. I'll put my name in here. You can add another search term. These are going to be case sensitive. You'll notice they are ors. If you want ands or you want to build your own, you can use regular expressions. Write the regular expression, drop it in here, click next. All right, I'm going to use the 68, one of the 68 built-in ones. So what I want to look for is any US social security number in that data set. So there's a chance there could be social numbers in there. Let's see if that's there. If it is there, sanitize it. Then I can use that to go ahead and train my AI model. So let's click next. So I already have my deep analytics query created. So I'm going to choose that option. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to choose, where did I put that? That was the PII scan for sales. All right. I'm going to click next. And here, now I'm going to enrich the data. So part of this process says, okay, when I find PII, what do you want to do with it? So I'm going to create a new key called PII. Hit enter to save that and press next. Same as the other workflow, one time or repeating. I'm going to choose one time. I want this to start automatically. I'm going to call this sales SSN. Flow and hit next. All right. Preview everything I've selected. Let's click start workflow. So let's see what this is doing for me already. Well, I have a concern. So I wasn't supposed to find any social security numbers in that sales folder, but I've already tagged 2 files. All right, cool. Let's go take a look at what it's tagging. Again, deep analytics, global metadatabase. I'm enriching the data now. So I'm going to choose new query. And now I'm going to drop down here to Komprise tags. In Komprise tags, I can see I've got my sales PII key now. And the value is the name of the content scanner. So when you're using the 68 built-in content scanners, the value for the tag will always be the name of that content scanner. So let's go ahead and click on that, click add, and run. All right, so tagging is continuing. I've already found 4,000 files. All right, so I know I cannot take this data and start training my AI model because there's a risk. So let's eliminate that risk. Darren, this kind of feeds into the question you were talking about earlier. How do I use deep analytics to sanitize my data? Well, I'm going to save this one. Again, I'm going to make it public because I want you to be able to see it. I'm going to call this sales confined because I want to confine this data. So let me hit save. All right. Now, again, reviewing data, need to train an AI model, found data where it doesn't belong. So let's clean that data. Let's get it out of that area and make it safe for consumption. Go to plan. And I'm going to create a new plan that's different from the previous one. So new. I call this one sales. I'm going to call this one confine. And now I'm going to choose that confine option here at the bottom. I'm going to turn this on. Again, deep analytics query, very specific. But now I have that sales confine query that I created in deep analytics. So what this is going to do in the confine operation is it's going to take anything that's tagged as being sensitive data. In this case, I'm looking for social security numbers that have been tagged. It's going to remove it from the production area, put it in a safe zone that I define. So a folder that I define that only administrators have access to. Once that's done, it's actually going to also keep the original folder structure. So I'm not creating just like this data warehouse, wondering where my data came from. All that data is moved, again, moved out of the production area, put in the safe landing zone. It keeps all the same folder structure, so you have a breadcrumb trail to know where it came from. You can choose to remove the social security numbers. You can choose to let legal or compliance review it. You can even delete the data. So in that confined area, the options are almost infinite. You can even turn around and archive that data on a tape and remove it from production storage. Again, completely your choice what you want to do with it once it's confined.
I think
All
that's
right.
an important point because we're focusing so much on the analytics, but it's really being able to do something with the data that you found. And
Yep.
there was a comment that came in, actually via text. In higher ed this time of year, students leave, they graduate, and one of our customers said in the history of the school nobody had deleted a file. So Comprise is able to help them do that. But can you talk about deletion? Is that our approach would be confined and then let the organization manage the deletion policy?
You can do it that way, and that's actually I was a customer of Comprise, and everyone was always afraid to hit that delete button. Someone had to take ownership of it. This gives you that preview capability. You can also enable Comprise to delete it automatically for you. Talk to your sales team, talk to your CSM. They can enable that feature for you. But I personally like that ring fence. I think ring fencing is a better term, where I get to ring fence the data, do one last review, and then somebody gets to make that decision. Usually compliance or legal is the one pushing that button. But um, it's again, going back to what you said just a second ago, is that deep analytics, I'm talking about some of the things we've already covered, but deep analytics is what drives, it's what empowers you to make decisions in your data journey, whether it's cost savings, whether it's deletion, whether it's training an AI model. Um, Again, the sky's the limit on what you want to do here with the data. But for me, it always starts with the analytics. It starts with the information about the data to help make very informed, very smart decisions.
And you showed a couple of things there pretty quickly. I mean, most of what we talk about is metadata based, but then you started talking about enriching with tags, and you
Oh,
also
yeah.
talked about cracking open files with the scanners. So
Yeah.
really kind of going beyond some of the use cases some of the folks on this call may know us for.
Exactly. And we talked about tagging through PII detection, but what if I just want to tag my data and I don't need to use any of the workflows or scanning tools? I already know where my sensitive data sits. So let me just tag it and enrich it that way. So again, another great segue. Let's drop back into deep analytics and talk about tagging. So I'm going to create a new query. In here, I'm going to go to Boston. I'm going to go to the Isilon. I'm going to go to the admin chair. So in this admin chair, I'm going to say, actually, I'll be more specific. I'm going to say within accounting, I'm going to have sensitive data. So I've changed my site. I'm looking at a different share. Again, being more specific, I could say, hey, I want to look at the entire share. I want to tag this entire Isilon. But again, I want to be only in the accounting area because I know I'm going to have sensitive data. I could have credit cards. I could have anything in there. So let me run this. So I've run this query, 628,000 files. I know this is going to contain sensitive data. So why waste my time doing anything else? Let me save this. And I'm going to make it public. Accounting PII tagging. All right, so I'm going to save this. So I can rerun this query at any point in time. But now what I want to do is I want to apply tags to all this data. So here I get to create a key. I'm going to create a generic key called accounting, and I'm going to call this PII. So I get to specify the value now. So accounting is the key. value is PII. I'm going to hit add tag and then apply changes. So what this is going to do is apply that tag to 628,000 files. And that's going to run in the background. If I want to see what's going on, all I have to do is click on the tagging jobs. It'll tell me the process has started and where it is in that process. So far, it's already tagged 4,800 files. So it'll run really quickly in the background. So let me go back here to queries. We touched on user versus system queries, but I want to show you system queries because I've used some of them now. So when I use a query, so I start by creating a user query, but when I put that query into service, it creates a copy and makes it a system query. It locks that query. What that allows me to do is it allows my plans, it allows my workflows to run and not be affected because these workflows can be changed. So a user can modify the query because I made them public, I didn't make them private. Anybody can use those queries. Once they become a system query and I'm using them in a workflow, using them in a tiering archiving, they're locked so that if anybody changes the query, it doesn't automatically change my workflow and potentially start confining or deleting data. If you want to modify the query, you resave the query, you come back over to your plan, and then you choose that query again to update it and use the new values. So something to note, again, system queries are once a user query is effective, it's locked. If you want to change it, stop the plan, re-choose the query, it creates a new copy, restart the plan. Again, it's that nice safety net to prevent users from acting on data that you don't want making automatic changes.
And I like on that screen, you can see where it's being used. It's being used in a workflow or it's being used in a plan.
Yep.
Hey, Ben, we got a question back on tagging. Does it actually tag it as file metadata on the file itself or only within the app? And also, can you elaborate on an earlier topic regarding ring fencing? I think that's an important one.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'll hit the first question here, which was the tagging. So Komprise is not going to modify or change your source data. We're going to enrich the information about your data in the global metadatabase. So within Komprise, we store those tags for you, never modifying your original source data, which actually kind of is a lead into another topic that I'm going to cover. But let me see if I can answer that second question. So what was the question about ring fencing there?
Just back on Confine, you made a point about how you prefer Confine because it really ring fences. You're not actually deleting.
Yeah, exactly. So confine by nature confines the data, it ring fences it, it takes it out of the production area. Again, whatever the DA query specifies, or if you use the share selector, whichever process you want to use. I prefer using a query to be specific, but that confine operation will move the data out of the source and put it in that confined area, that ring fenced area that I specify. It
And where
keeps
do you
the same
specify?
folder
Did you
structure.
specify that in this interface or as an admin?
You specify that as an admin. So an admin, you can specify what it'll do by default is it will go into a hidden folder at the root of the share that no one but administrators have access to. But you have the freedom and flexibility to change that.
Great.
All right. So let's jump into the next thing, which was we started to wind up for it here earlier with a question about tagging. So let me go back into deep analytics. And actually, you know what, Darren? I think it'd be better to, I'll show it here and then we'll talk about the slide. So little bit about data lakehouses. So what if I have this query, I'll pick marketing sales data older than 1 year. Well, when I click on a list of files, I get some information here about it. When I click on the download link, I get all of the metadata extracted to me in a CSV format, including the path of the file, all the dates and age ranges, the ownership. It gives me all that information. Well, what if I want to leverage Snowflake or Databricks? The answer is yes. You can do that today. So if you want to integrate Komprise with Snowflake Databricks, contact your sales team, contact your CSM. There's going to be an announcement here on that shortly. So with that, Darren, any more questions before I jump back to the slides for a minute?
Yeah, a couple others. I think it's just good to
Yeah,
stay in DA for a second. One was a
sure.
comment on being able to see across different vendors at the same time. You've always been
Yes.
kind of diving into just, say Isilon. What if you said multi-site, but what if it's multi-vendor?
Yeah. So right here on my screen, up in the Atlanta site, I'm going to look across the entire Isilon cluster, the entire Pure FlashBlade, the entire Windows server. Go ahead and hit run. So I can look across the entire landscape from one pane of glass.
That's powerful. And then I always like it when you show data stores because there's just so much you can do in that interface. Is there a connection to what you're doing there and setting up your different columns to how you use DA?
So what's really cool about data stores, so I've switched screens here, I've gone to data stores, is behind the scenes with data stores, you also have the freedom and flexibility to dive into your shares and see the data and metadata from data stores. This is the power behind this, or what's actually doing this, is the Komprise Global Metadatabase. So the metadatabase that you leverage in deep analytics is also helping you drive decisions inside your data stores page. And then you had a question about columns. Let me drop back up here for a second. So let me look at this Isilon. Don't forget, this screen you can customize simply by clicking on the columns. Any of these fields on the left, you can move to the right so they're visible. Anything that's on the right you don't want to see, you can simply drop it back over here.
So the next one I wanted to talk about is you mentioned in the slides setting up a deep analytics only user or role. How does that work?
Thanks, Darren. I totally forgot about that. So deep analytics, empowering your end users to run queries, end users, researchers, data stewards, legal compliance teams, anybody. So let's talk about that. Let's go to system, users. Let's talk about adding a user. So I'm going to create test user. And I'm going to go to role. I'm going to choose deep analytics. And here I can say access all the shares or access restricted shares. So let's see what that does. I can then choose what shares this user has access to. So I'm going to create a deep analytics role for Darren. I'm going to say you're going to have access to the sales area. Well, let's see what other shares here. I want to give you access to, well, the marketing as well. Another marketing share. Well, Darren, you kind of got marketing folders all over the place here. And then let's see, got anything else in here? All right. So I'm going to leave it right. Oops, there's a little twisty there. That's ops. And then, oops, another sales. So I'm going to empower you, Darren, to create queries and tag data based on anything in the marketing and sales area. So when I click add, it'll create that user. When they log in, they're only going to have the deep analytics tab at the top, and they'll be able to write queries, save queries, and help us make some informed decisions by creating queries on their data or tagging some of that data. All right.
Yeah, that's a really powerful use case. We're seeing, say research teams. So the IT operations infrastructure group can give them deep analytics only access. They know their data, right? They know what they're looking for. They can create tags, but they can't move anything. They can't, cause any trouble.
Yeah, and actually, there's a really good use case out there by a health network as well as a research institution that has empowered their end users through showback, shameback, whichever you want to use, chargeback. They've told the users, this is your cost for the storage. This is what your organization is going to pay month over month based on the amount of data that you're storing. And they're using the reports inside of Komprise to talk about that, which, again, next video. Then they empower the end users to tag their data. So if they're done with the data, so in research projects, grants, when they're over, they're saying if you want to reduce these costs so you can gain back some of your budget, tag the data. Once the data has been tagged, they tier it and it reduces their cost month over month. So they're empowering end users to make decisions on their cost, on their budgets, right from in deep analytics.
Awesome. And just back on the deep analytics interface, when you're creating a query on that, you mentioned being able to hit multi-vendor. So if I'm looking for stale, this is a comment that came in. If I'm looking for stale virtual machines or old SQL dump files across NetApp and Isilon, what would you do?
Yep. So what I can do here is I'll choose NetApp and Isilon, and then I can go to file extensions. I'm sorry, file types, and I can choose database is one of them. Also virtual machines. So you can choose those two, or you can say, I only want to look for these very specific images or SQL dump files. Then I can say hasn't been accessed or modified. You get to choose a combination thereof. I'm going to say it hasn't been accessed in more than a year and hit add. So I'm sorry, more than a day. Let's change that to year. Year, add. Okay. So I'm going to say look across multiple storage vendors, look for database and virtual machine files that haven't been touched in 1 year or more. When I hit run, In this situation, I've got over 1 million files. I get a preview of all those files from there. Now, remember, this is a simulator, so that you'll see all the file extensions here, but that's how you run the query. Simply choose the formats. If you want to choose the category of files, make it easy. If you want to be specific, you specify the extension type. So, okay, maybe I want to be more specific. I'm going to change my query. So rather than choosing database or virtual machine, I'm going to choose VM file. Or VMX, yeah, you can VMX, QCal2. You can add any one of those and say, okay, I only want to find KVMs. So I can do that here. Hit run. In this case, I don't have any.
And then that query would be your input for a plan, a confined plan.
Exactly. Yep. You would save the output of this to then do something with it. Maybe you want to convert it to object. Maybe you want to tier or archive it. Maybe you want to send a tape. Maybe you want to confine it. You have that freedom and flexibility. Again, another good use case for confined, specifically virtual machines. Think of it like a screen test. If you want to remove virtual machines that haven't been accessed in a year or more, I would confine them for like a cooling off period. Maybe another 30, 60, 90 days, confine them. No one has access to them. After that, delete them, tier them, archiving. You have the freedom and flexibility to choose.
Hey, one more question. I know we're kind of getting to the end of the time. There are some organizations that only use Komprise for migration. What's the connection? I know deep analytics requires the full platform, but what would some ways to tie deep analytics into a migration use case be? Or is it mostly tiering, ingestion, things like that?
I leverage deep analytics all the time to help me make the decisions. I look at the date ranges. I look at the users. I look at I compare and contrast the shares together using deep analytics. The plan page gives you aggregated information. Deep analytics through the global metadatabase gives you very specific information. And another good one here, Darren, let me go back and create a new query here real quick. That's something I forgot to show. So good call out. This is one that I love to show users before they do migrations. Owner. There's an option here called undefined owner, which means the identity cannot be resolved. So what does that mean? A lot of times organizations delete user IDs when they leave the organization, creating orphaned data, another term for this. So what I can do is I can run a quick report to see a list of all the orphaned data in my environment. I can now, again, further refine this to say, okay, maybe that's a little bit too vague because maybe there's still some user that's being accessed. Okay, well, let's look at this. Anything that's undefined, so their identity is gone and hasn't been accessed in 3 or more years. All right, so 15 terabytes, 337,000 files. Preview this list. So again, this is all orphan data. Largely, I'm pretty sure now because I'm saying 3 years or more, hasn't been touched in 3 years or more, no user ID associated with it. Do you need this data? So now we start talking about smart migrations. Why, we can do a lift and shift, sure, but why? Why not tier or archive this? Why not delete this data? Again, empower your organization, partner with legal, partner with compliance, make decisions. Do you have a budget to repurchase all the storage you have today? Well, looking at the current economy, storage has doubled, quadrupled in price. So maybe you have to replatform, but you can't take all your data here. So leverage deep analytics to do a smart migration, remove what's not required, tier or archive the old data, and then do your migration all through the power of deep analytics.
Yeah, that's a good point. Given the cost right now of storage, a lot of what you just showed is probably sitting on primary storage. So it's not just cold data; it's the rot data, right? That is taking up space that you're going to need to be more cost effective. Hey Ben, last question. Maybe pop. Well, let's see. Does Deep Analytics have the ability to identify files and folders that contain specific NTFS ACL entries? For example, locate any files or folders within a share where old group has permissions assigned at a file/folder level.
Great question. Now we're leaning in a roadmap a little bit. I would say stay tuned in the very near future. Watch for an announcement. So
yeah, good question.
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
I wanted to make sure we hit it. Okay, we don't have product management on this call, but we'll definitely note that it came up. All right,
Yes.
Let's jump into just wrap it up because we promised people 45 and we want to stay true to that. So give us the conclusion and kind of a little bit of a hint on what's next.
Yeah. So deep analytics unlocks your unstructured data, which is going to lead into the next slide I'm going to bring up here in a second. shows the power of the global metadatabase. So deep analytics, you're empowering your end users to make decisions based on that global metadatabase. Storage teams allows you to deliver data services. We talked about the lift and shifts, the smart migrations, tiering and archiving, watching your budgets, empowering your end users to make decisions to lower their budgets because maybe you're doing chargebacks, shamesbacks, showbacks. Your AI journey. This is where I see it used almost all the time, is you have to make very, very smart decisions to train a model and train it very well. You can't just send all your data at AI and expect to get good decisions, good answers. You're not. It's going to be garbage in, garbage out. If you train it with a digital landfill, you're going to get garbage answers. So mine your data, leverage the metadatabase to reduce your data sets and train your AI agents, bots, whatever you're working with on the valuable data that gets you the right answer every time. Well, and also talking about moving on, we touched on Snowflake and Databricks. Most recently, Snowflake talked about this. These are statistics that are out in the industry that 80% of the data in the wild is unstructured data. It's growing at a pace of 60% year over year across the industry. This last statistic was just absolutely staggering to me. Less than 0.5%, I'll say it again, less than 0.5% of the metadata about unstructured data. So 80% of the data is out there. Only 0.5% of it is available in Snowflake to help you make informed decisions. Again, power of Komprise. We can do this today. Talk to your sales team. Another big announcement about this coming up in the very near future. So stay tuned.
And there was a comment about Microsoft Fabric integration. So we're open to that discussion. We'd love to talk to you about your use case.
Absolutely. So Darren, I'll turn it back over to you here to talk about the next one.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Hopefully you all got something good out of this, and you're going to dive into deep analytics. I mean, many of you, if you're running the full platform of Komprise, it's there. Get in there and start finding some different. Every time we talk to customers, we hear different use cases. It's really powerful. On our next one, there's an area that's very much related to this, which is about sharing the insights, right? Being able to then create reports. Ben mentioned shareback, showback a few times. We're going to dive into that in our next session. So join us in July. I think the registration link will be in the chat. If it's not already, I can go grab it. And then check out our best practice videos. So it's on the website under resources, engage. That's where we put a bunch of these. We want you guys to go and find out how to get the most out of Komprise. So let me just go in here real quick to the events page, and I'm going to put the link in for the next office hours in July, because I know you all want to get registered for it early. So I'm going to put it in to the chat. There it is. All right. Well, great. Thanks, Ben. Any final thoughts? Final word?
Again, if you have a migration only license, talk to your account team. If you have a full license, you already have access to everything I showed you today. Thanks for joining.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.